Welcome to How to Be the Difference with your hosts, Joanna and Paul. A podcast for the career you want, or maybe just that push you need. If you want to know what your dream career looks like, join us to get inspiration from industry experts that will make that dream career a reality.
Hello, welcome to How to Be the Difference. My name is Joanna Molina, co-founder of the Intern Group, and I'm currently based in Colombia, as you can probably tell by my beautiful accent. Alongside me is Paul Linsky, who is in Ireland. How are you today, Paul?
As you can tell by my not so beautiful accent, or maybe beautiful accent, I'm not too sure. I am doing well, Joanna. Thanks a million.
I really like it. What's coming up in today's episode?
In today's episode, we will be speaking with Claire Diaz-Ortiz, from one of Twitter's first 50 employees to a best-selling author. We talk about her career and how to succeed in journalism, publishing, and media. And that's coming up a little later on the show. But first, we should really kind of introduce ourselves, Joanna.
Why don't you kick us off? Tell us about yourself.
I'll keep this very brief because I don't know how much interest we'll have. But I went to university to study sound engineering, and I wasn't too crazy about sound engineering. And I just worked a normal job, and I worked my way up, and I became an operations manager for a company here in Ireland. But I was slowly losing my mind in my office without any windows. So I had a bit of a quarterly life crisis. I decided to go back and study sports journalism. And then from there, I worked in loads of different radio stations for free, sweeping the floors, doing absolutely everything I could. And eventually I was given my own commercial radio show here in Dublin. And then I've gone from a few different radio stations, and now I've got a small radio show in Dublin, and I also work for the Intern Group. I'm experienced lead for Europe and Africa, so that's fun as well. So yeah, that's pretty much about me. How about yourself, Joanna?
Yes, that's very fun. And also the host of this podcast. About me, so as I said before, I'm one of the co-founders of the Intern Group. I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm constantly in transformation. I'm really, really passionate about education and different ways of learning. And that's one of the reasons why we are creating this podcast. I'm a really firm believer that magic comes from diversity and when you exchange knowledge with people from different backgrounds. That's why I'm super excited about all the incredible people that we are going to meet here. And I will say that my superpowers are curiosity and compassion. What about yours, Paul? What are your superpowers?
Procrastinating. Oh, sorry, nice. Superpowers. Flying. No, I don't know. What are my superpowers, Joanna?
Oh, that's very handy, flying in times of COVID.
Really handy.
I will say that communication, communicating with people, and kindness.
Okay, you don't know me at all, but you're very sweet. Thank you. That, I suppose that's something for people to think about. What is your superpower?
That's really cool, Paul. Paul, why don't you tell us why are we doing this podcast?
Joanna, I suppose like the idea for the podcast came, I suppose, from the two of us, but really this is something that's been affecting. I suppose it affected me through school. I suppose when I was a teenager, and you're kind of sat down and you're saying like, what is it that you want to do? And you just kind of pick a university, pick a subject, and you're like, yeah, I'll study this, and then hopefully a career will form afterwards. But it's not always kind of like that. So I studied sound engineering, as I said before. And I didn't really want a career in that. So I kind of got caught in a bit of a no man's land until I went back to university and decided really what I wanted to do. So I suppose this podcast is for everyone who's undecided, who wants a career change, who wants to know more about the industry that they want to be involved in, or any industry really. And it's a bit of a tip in your, like, it's kind of like putting your toe in the water and just checking out what a career may look like. What a job may look like, and something that will help you along your path to a successful career.
Totally. I think a lot of people could relate to that. I personally can't, because I also dropped out of university when I was doing journalism to move into finance. And so definitely a program like this will have been very helpful back then.
And this is it. It's like, it's not only are we going to hear from industry experts and people who have been really, really successful, but we'll also have people who are starting out. We will have other tips, other knowledge, and stuff that make you really make an informed decision on what it is you want to do. And, maybe you're not passionate about what it is you're doing at the moment and you want a career change. This is for you as well. So this week's topic is journalism, publishing, and media. And before we get into the guest speaker, we both actually have experience, Joanna, with journalism. Publishing side, not so much. Media, I am terrible at media. Like any Twitter, TikTok. Are you on TikTok?
I didn't like it, actually. I was, but I didn't like it much.
You're way better than me. I can't do it. I don't post for the radio show. I need someone else to do that for me. I just don't have the interest. You're great I've seen your Instagram though. That's great.
Yes, I quite like that. I wasn't so good at journalism, especially the writing aspect of it. I think that's probably why I dropped out of communications and journalism, because I had to write all these essays that I couldn't. Yes, if you want me to write an article, Paul, you need to give me a month.
Well, I mean, I can't write anything, so even a month is better than what I can do. Anyway, listen, Joanna, who is our guest today?
So today we have Claire Diaz-Ortiz. She's one of Twitter's early employees, and after leading social innovation at Twitter, she became a best-selling author. She has over 10 books, and she's a public speaker, influencer, and investor. She was named one of the top 100 most creative people in business by Fast Company and a force for good by Forbes.
And you that's a brilliant intro, but you left out a major part.
What did I miss?
It's Claire she has been called the woman who got the Pope on Twitter, which isn't the best nickname, and Twitter's pontiff recruitment chief for our efforts with the Vatican. She, in an official ceremony, gave the Pope his Twitter account. So I would have went with the Holy Twitter account or something like that, maybe.
Yes,
Holy something.
That's a really good point. I shouldn't have missed that. So let's listen to Claire, this interview, this chat that we had, and where she will summarize in 10 minutes her career and some really interesting lessons learned. Claire, nice to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. So where did you grow up and whereabouts in the world are you?
Sure. So I grew up in Northern California, and that is sort of where I was until my early 20s. And then I've spent most of the last 15 years living around the world in different places, much of that time in Latin America. I've been in Argentina now for about a decade.
Wow. And how did you choose your career in journalism, publishing, and media?
Sure. So, I mean, I sort of fell into things. After graduating, I did a master's degree in anthropology and then ended up kind of traveling the world and starting to write, essentially. I was working on my first book when I fell into the experience of starting a nonprofit out in East Africa. And the reason that I was able to kind of get that nonprofit off the ground was really because of this blog I had started, this blog that had become kind of popular out of nowhere. And at the time, the people who started blogger.com, which was where many people were blogging in those days, and this was in the mid 2000s, that company, they had started Twitter. So they had incubated out a small project to Twitter. And so when they launched Twitter as sort of a side project, they asked if I wanted to, get on it and start tweeting. And I was living in Kenya with this nonprofit. I didn't have much else going on, and I was very eager to connect with people around the world. And so I started on Twitter and quickly became sort of an influential user. And from there ended up beginning to work at the company. And so I spent a number of years working at Twitter. And it was while I was there that I published my first two books, I guess. And so that was I kind of fell in love with the process of writing, and I've just sort of been doing it ever since.
What was the moment when you felt that this career was for you?
It's interesting because I think for me, writing was something that I always knew would be a part of my life. I mean, I remember I was living in Argentina in 2005, and I had this dream of writing a book, and I had gone online to Google, and I was Googling how to write a book proposal, and following the instructions of what it told me to do, because this was always sort of something I wanted to do. But I think for me, the big thing was figuring out a way to make it work within the context of a larger career. Because although I love writing, I'm not a novelist. I'm not the type of writer that is content just being alone a lot. And so I knew I needed to combine it with some type of career in business, which is essentially what I ended up doing.
And what would you say, what does someone need to succeed in journalism, publishing, and media?
Well, I think these days what one needs to succeed is a little bit different than what it used to be. I think, 20 years ago, learning to be a good writer by reading a lot and then writing a lot and writing some more was enough. I think these days, though, some of the career of being in journalism and in writing words is actually about also connecting with people online. So for me, I have been lucky because social networking and social media has been a part of my work at the same time. But I would say that, most writers these days who want to be able to make a living doing it have to have some kind of working understanding and working use of, at least one social media platform, say.
And what are some of the common myths or misconceptions about journalism, publishing, and media?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest misconception is probably, comes from the history of the discipline, which is simply that, 30 years ago, it was enough to write something wonderful and have someone else publish it. These days, so much of the work of being in writing and having a story to tell is about trying to get the eyeballs on it and make sure that people actually read your content. And so that's why so many people who care about writing these days have to spend time learning some of the basic tools like running an email newsletter or, being an active participant on, as I say, one social media platform, not necessarily all of them. So I think that can be a bit of a challenge sometimes for writers who would like to be, just content to kind of sit in their ivory tower and type away at their novel. You have to be more social in this world, unfortunately, with writing these days.
And in your opinion, what are the key skills to succeed in the 21st century?
I think there are so many, but I think to build off of what I've been kind of hinting at, if not directly saying, this idea of connecting in the 21st century in our digital world is really essential, more so than ever if you have some type of career in publishing and media. So I think building those skills and building out that muscle is really essential.
Claire, what are your good habits that make a difference in your career?
I used to have a very good habit of a very strict morning routine that was very excellent for me and would get me started well in my day. It is different these days because I have 3 small children, but I still do a morning routine, except that I now do it when I kind of come into my office and right before I start my work. So it used to be something I would do first thing, and now it is something I do before really getting into my work and getting going. And I find that there are different things you can do in a routine, in a morning routine. But for me, a lot of it is, journaling and doing some reading and some kind of centering or prayer or meditation. And it helps set me up for the day. Just that kind of moment of taking time to myself and being quiet before I then move into kind of scheduling, seeing what's on my plate, and then starting to attack it.
What's the biggest mistake you've learned from?
So many mistakes. There have been mistakes at every step of the journey, and I think that is sometimes something that is hard to accept. You think that the more successful you will become, the fewer mistakes you will make, but that is actually not the case at all. You are going to make mistakes every month, every week, every day, probably for forever. So I think actually it's just about learning to accept that you're going to make mistakes and accept that you need to, learn how to be authentic and apologize for them or move on from them or, forgive yourself for them, essentially.
What has been the 2 or 3 best bits of advice you've been given?
I think that I'll tell you one of the best bits of advice that I've been given that has been really important to me over the years was around mentorship. And this, I became so convinced in the power of a good mentor that I ended up writing a book about mentoring with one of my mentors, because I just feel that, especially as a woman or a person of color, having a mentor is critical to helping you open doors and find sort of your path and find the right people who can help guide you on that road. So I think doing what you can to find a mentor is really essential.
How do you think an internship will help people in their careers?
Well, I mean, an internship in many ways is a form of a programmatized version of mentorship. So I think that an internship is a chance to try something that you maybe don't have a lot of experience with, but it is also a chance to, try to learn from someone in a field. And so I think if you can approach an internship as a potential mentorship, you can sort of get even more out of it than you anticipate, because you're getting kind of the skills of that discipline, but you're also potentially getting the relationships and the guidance from someone who can help you.
Is there any podcast, book, or research that inspires you and you'd like to recommend?
Yeah, I listen to tons of podcasts and books. I would say that one book that I frequently come back to is a book called Essentialism, and it's by Greg McKeown. And it's an excellent book for helping you clarify what matters most in, your project that you're working on or in your life in general. And I think it is a book that I try to reread every few years or so. I think in this day and age, we are all very, very scattered with many different projects and goals and ideas, and trying to remember what matters most is a very good exercise. And in and of itself, I think that can help you get a little bit more closer to, the focus you need to really succeed.
I can't wait to read it. What would you say to all the women out there listening and admiring your career?
Look, I think finding someone you admire as a mentor or a mentor from afar is a really good first step to trying to figure out what it is that you yourself want to do. And I don't think there is a point at which you should stop doing that. I think you should always sort of be looking a few steps ahead of you to who is on a journey that you admire or would like to aspire to be on, because that helps sort of guide your path and tell you where you really want to be. So yeah, I keep looking for those people ahead of you.
And then finally, if they ask, who will you drop everything for and happily just make their coffee?
Wow. I mean, there are a lot of people. So, I mean, I would absolutely love to make coffee for Oprah one day. I think she is an incredible force. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I think if there's someone in media you can learn from, it's Oprah Winfrey.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for inspiring us today with all these thoughts and your experience and your career.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun to be here.
Well, that was Claire Diaz-Ortiz. Excellent interview. I really enjoyed that. What was your favorite part, Joanna?
I would say that the importance of finding a mentor, that I think is a really good way of boosting or expediting your career. I can personally vouch for that from the mentors and mentees perspective. I think it has really helped me grow personally and professionally. And it's really an opportunity that we all have. Maybe we can do an episode only in mentorship in the future, in how to find a mentor, how to make the most of one. What about you, Paul? What was your favorite part?
I think it was just her career in general. I mean, starting out, she worked at an orphanage and she worked in Africa, and then she was able to transition into being into a big tech company, one of the early doors employees. It's a fascinating story. and then everything that came in with social innovation and change, and then transitioning again into being a very successful author. It was fascinating, absolutely brilliant.
I agree with you, Paul. And that's it for this week's episode. Watch out for all the great guests that we'll have next. Thanks again for listening to How to Be the Difference. If you enjoyed it, please share with a friend and give us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd love to know how you are making a difference.
And you can reach us at howtobetheDifference@theinterngroup.com or on Instagram @theinterngroup. And until next time, we'll see you then.
See you then.